Hi, Gina-san. So thank you so much for joining this YouTube channel. So how you feel?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
sunny in London, so it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a good day.
Great, great. So I think everybody don't know you. So that's why, can you tell us who are you, a self-introduction?
I'm Gina. I'm originally from California, but I'm currently living in the United Kingdom and working here. I'm in London, and I've been in London for about 3 years, and I love it. And I think it's a great opportunity to be able to travel in Europe and just have lots of new experiences. So I'm really enjoying so far.
Amazing. And so you contacted us on in October, I think, last year, 2022, and then you never been to Japan, and then but you want to learn Japanese. So why you wanted to learn Japanese this time?
Yeah, I've always appreciated just Japanese language and culture. I grew up watching a lot of anime, reading manga as well.
Mm.
And my dad works for a Japanese-based company in the US. He's working in the US for a branch, the US branch. And he would always kind of bring back gifts or things when he would go on his travels. And so I've always really appreciated it. And
Mm.
recently, now that there's been, I guess, allowance of foreigners to come back into Japan after the pandemic time, and the borders have opened, he got the opportunity to go on a work trip. And I thought that would be a really good opportunity for me to also meet him there because I've always wanted to go and just
Mm.
make the time. So our plan was to meet up and go to explore around, and it was great because I got to see my dad. I also got to visit Japan because I've always wanted to go, and that definitely prompted me to think ahead of time and want to learn so that I was better prepared
Mm.
visiting, and that I could also show respect with my father's colleagues if I met them, and I think
Mm.
that was really important for me.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And so because it's you have kind of really rare to ask because a lot of people actually have already learning experience a lot, which is a lot of people study with a textbook. They try to study by themselves. They really couldn't actually make a progress so much, and they come here. But you actually came here straight away, right? Without actually so much experience in Japanese. Did you have any reason?
I wanted to be efficient with my
Mm,
time, and I know Spanish already,
mm,
and I know that how much time goes into learning the right things.
mm,
And I just wanted to be very efficient with the time and learn from in a way that was clear for the goals that I had, which I wanted. My goals were I wanted to speak and I wanted to be able to listen and interact.
usually people say, oh, because it's our most of the students coming from the States, and then people say, oh, I have learned Spanish, but yeah, it was very difficult. I couldn't learn. They have a mind blocking, learning language, it's very, hard. And now you learn two languages, which is three languages speaker. It's like a really dream skill for them. So do you have any message to them that is how you actually can be a three or even four languages speaker in the future?
Yeah, I'm always so impressed when I see people online who can speak multiple
Mm,
languages, or they do kind of those reaction videos as well, like being able to speak in multiple different languages and dialects so quickly. And I think what is important is just kind of applying maybe the 20/80 rule, which means that 20% of the effort will yield kind of 80% results, depending on what the goal is. So
mm,
if my goal was to visit Japan, speak every day, have maybe, be able to experience those everyday conversations, then actually, it doesn't mean I need to be able to explain, some complex subject. My goal was just that specific part, and there's different ways that you can go about prioritizing like the goals. I think what is important. So if people say, oh, I wasn't able to learn Spanish, maybe their expectation is being able to learn how to describe every single situation in multiple tenses and multiple vocabulary words, when in reality, if someone's goal is specific, then you can actually work towards that situation versus trying to learn every single thing. I mean, there's probably things in Spanish that even I don't know yet, but I know how to describe, or different ways to get to the same conclusion using a basic term of phrases. And I think that's maybe people might be putting a lot of pressure on themselves to learn the full vocabulary and context and past and present and future, when really, if you have a goal that's specific enough, you just have to learn what's related to that particular goal. And I think going into the lessons with Shono-san, it's also me driving the lesson and me driving what I want to be able to say. So it's both of us working together. It's not just, her responsibility, and it's not just my responsibility, but I do have to come in and say, okay, today I want to learn how to ask for directions to the train station, or I want to ask if something is spicy in the food. And I have to also drive what my intentions are very clearly in the lesson so that I can get the most out of it as well.
That's really true. I always say language is a space. So if you don't decide where to go, you just go around and you're not gonna actually really learn anything. It's a, dictionary, we have 500,000 words, and kanji, we have 50,000 characters. So it's a massive information. So we need to decide, I want to go to the restaurant. So it's this I need. I want to go to the train station. I need this. I don't need to discover everything, right?
Yeah, it has to be incremental. That's the only way you can look at it. And if I told myself, oh, I won't go to Japan until I feel a certain proficiency level, I might never have booked any of my train tickets, because I might have always been setting like expectations for myself. When in reality, even after 10 lessons, and I learned a lot in those 10 lessons, and I still have, so many more to go. I think even in that amount of time, I was able to still use so much of it, and it made me feel validated that my effort was worth it, because I could see in real time the feedback of, people recognizing, oh, you're trying really hard, or your pronunciation's so good, or, just people generally being really happy. And there shouldn't be anything daunting about it, but it has to be incremental.
Yeah, that's true. Really, thank you so much. So finally, because here is like we say like bilingual training, and also learning Japanese. This is a concept, and you actually really became a trilingual. Of course, you can of course more improve, and I also, my English is not perfect always. So, but and being bilingual, it doesn't mean you speak perfect, right? So that's why you just can communicate. You have the ability to communicate with this person with a different language, but of course you can improve. So like, what do you think? Like, because we provide this learning structure rather than just using only textbook and vocabulary. So general, like a majority of learning language, textbook, grammar, and vocabulary and everything to our learning structure. What did you see the differences?
Definitely. I think it was just really efficient for the time. And I learned so much more than I would have learned on my own, because I had someone to be accountable with, which was Shono-san. Shono was so encouraging with each lesson as well. So my motivation increased over time to say, okay, I want to do really well. And even when she would compliment or say, yeah, you're doing amazing, that helped me drive even more to be more motivated towards my goal. I think also just focusing on speaking and listening and like we do read in the lesson because she's writing it down and I can read, is really important, because that is another thing that I wouldn't get just by myself. The structure of the lessons as well has been really helpful, because it's consistent. It's on a regular cadence. And I believe that if I had tried it on my own, I wouldn't have reached the level of success that I did. And I was able to just really focus on, every week, same schedule, practice speaking out loud, practice listening to what she was saying on the recording. And I think it was just really, really important and efficient for my time as well, because you're so busy and you have to be efficient with the learning. Otherwise, you feel like you're not progressing. And each week, I could definitely see the progression in my lessons with Shona as well.
So finally, you went to Japan, and then I saw your Instagram. It was like you had almost like all experience, like a traditional side, and also like a more pop culture side. So how was it?
It was wonderful. It was an amazing trip, and I'm very grateful to have had that experience because I looked forward to it for so long, and I, built up a lot of anticipation, especially through the lessons, and it was amazing because I got to experience the culture, as you mentioned. I got to see new things. I got to interact with people, even with the amount that I knew, and I can really tell that even just trying or making an effort initially in an interaction with using Japanese really opened people up to kind of it breaks the barrier, I think. And I got a lot of really great experiences with shopkeepers or people at the train station when I was trying to ask for help, or waiters at different restaurants. And it really breaks the barrier where you feel like you can have that human connection as well. And it was really wonderful.
That's amazing. Can you say something that is you use very often actually when you are staying in Japan? Do you have any phrases that you used?
I
Something?
have so many, yeah.
Uh-huh.
The one that I used a lot
Uh-huh.
was if I would initially say an interaction, or I'd say "okaike onegaishimasu," or I would I would do really well with kind of my pronunciation, and maybe they would say something that I actually didn't understand past that. Then my default was saying "nihongo mada skoshi shika hanasanai desu," to say, I only know, oh, sorry,
Amazing.
like I only know a little bit of Japanese, just in case, there was something that I didn't fully understand. And I wanted to say, like, oh, I'm sorry, like, mo ichido onegaishimasu. And so, yeah, it was great. One more time, please. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, you have really natural pronunciation, by the way. I was already mentioning like from the beginning, like you actually, I think repeat it many times. Like how did you actually really so much improve in your pronunciation, because you start from scratch, you never really even pronounce it in Japanese. And how did you practice every day?
I think the immersion was really important. So, an immersion in the sense of I would watch a lot of Japanese based films with the subtitles, or I would maybe watch some YouTube videos about people in Japan in their everyday life. And so I could kind of emulate what the intonation and the pronunciation. What's great is that after every lesson, Shona-san would record what we had gone through and what I was going to practice. And even just the listening to the recording repeatedly and then repeating was really helpful, because I could hear where she was kind of either enunciating, or maybe the intonation was a little bit different. And that made it better for practicing the actual pronunciation, like maybe a native might speak as well.
So you only prepared like 10 lessons before actually going the trip, because the majority of, I think it's international traveler go to Japan is they don't speak Japanese, right? So, and then, but you actually really fully prepared, but still 10 lessons, and you actually try to communicate with people. Like, what do you think? What was the differences for you?
I think traveling in Japan without Japanese is possible, but it doesn't provide you as enriching of an experience. Some of my favorite moments were actually when I was trying to communicate with someone. I went to, an earrings shop, and I could tell someone, oh, like, how much is this? Or I could ask questions about those items. But because they hear me trying, they might say, oh, like, where are you from? And I could say, California Shushin des. And those were some of my favorite interactions, was just trying and then saying, sugoi desu ne, like, that's amazing. And ask, and just the general interactions, I think, made it more enriching. So it is possible to go to Japan maybe not knowing the language, but I think people will have a more enriching experience if they do try, and they can break kind of some of those communication barriers to connect with people greater if they give it a try. And people can tell when you're trying, and it's totally fine.
Are you expat live in Japan? You started living in Japan, you're super excited to communicate with locals. You can enjoy traveling, meeting people. And now you start using this textbook and you feel like, wow, that's so many. Elementary school textbook, another elementary school textbook, and how many hours should you study? Let's think one more time. In order to communicate like a normal guy, you can do everything in the basic everyday life. Should you finish all those textbooks? Otherwise, you won't understand what they're talking. You cannot express yourself, anything. First of all, there are always two ways to learn languages. One is documentational language. The other one is conversational language. It's like, once upon a time, grandmother and grandfather are living somewhere. Or, hey, what's up? How's it going? Which is conversational. What is the most effective way to learn how to speak Japanese? Textbooks can't talk to you, so you cannot improve your listening skill and pronunciation, how to communicate. So why Japanese children can speak Japanese so quickly? Because they are learning conversational Japanese. The good news is, in Japan Language Factory, we have a specific learning structure to improve your conversational Japanese. So you can join the conversation, you can understand what they're talking, you can respond quickly, and express what you are thinking. If you want to be able to speak Japanese as soon as possible, join our free consultation to figure out what is the fastest way to start speaking Japanese.